Are you unknowingly accepting things that could be harming your spiritual growth? In the teachings of Buddhism, there are certain things you should never receive from anyone, no matter the circumstance. Today, we're diving into the world of Buddhist philosophy to explore 9 such things that could forever change the way you approach relationships and personal development. Lesson 1. Never accept disrespect. It is possible for us to experience sentiments of unworthiness and suffering as a result of disrespect, which undermines our sense of self-worth. Self-respect is of the utmost importance in Buddhism. According to the teachings of the Buddha, every living thing contains an innate value and the ability to achieve enlightenment. The essential Buddhist precept of self-compassion is in direct opposition to the practice of accepting disrespect, which refers to the act of allowing others to decrease our inherent worth. There are many different ways that disrespect may present itself, including verbal abuse, belittling, or dismissive conduct. The other person's ignorance or unresolved anguish is often the source of this kind of behavior. By allowing disrespect to be tolerated, we unintentionally endorse the conduct of the person and encourage the bad patterns that they demonstrate. In its place, we need to develop mindfulness and loving kindness, acknowledging that the acts of others are a mirror of the inner turmoil that they are experiencing and not of our own worth. Both our mental and emotional well-being may be safeguarded via the establishment of boundaries and the cultivation of self-respect. We are taught by Buddhism to react to disrespect with serenity and compassion, rather than anger or retribution, as this is the proper way to respond. Instead of quietly enduring maltreatment, we assertively convey our limits while retaining a compassionate viewpoint. This statement is not meant to imply that we are passively enduring harassment. Meditation and other activities that cultivate awareness may assist us in developing the strength and clarity necessary to detect disrespect and react in a capable manner. We are able to create a profound feeling of self-worth that is unshakable by the negative that comes from the outside world if we engage in consistent practice. Always keep in mind that the Buddha views you as a being that has an enormous amount of potential and worth. You are worthy of being treated with compassion and respect. Thus, you should never tolerate disrespect. Lesson 2. Never accept abuse. Any kind of abuse, whether it be physical, emotional, or psychological, is a serious breach of the basic human rights that we all possess. The Buddhist ideal of non-harm, known as ahimsa, is considered to be the foundation of ethical behavior. Not only does accepting abuse violate this ideal, but it also contributes to the perpetuation of cycles of misery and violence. Abuse damages our sense of self-worth and may result in trauma that lasts for a long time. It is of the utmost importance to acknowledge that no one is deserving of being mistreated, and that tolerating such behavior is never an acceptable course of action. Throughout his teachings, the Buddha stressed the significance of loving kindness, metta, and compassion toward oneself as well as other humans. We show respect for these principles and take a stance for our dignity and well-being when we refuse to engage in abusive behavior. Through the practice of Buddhism, we acquire the ability to develop mindfulness and awareness. Because of this, we are more able to recognize harmful tendencies and engage in necessary activities to safeguard ourselves. In order to successfully break out from abusive relationships, it is essential to seek help from members of one's family, trustworthy friends, or experts. A network of support, known as a sangha, is something that Buddhism urges us to cultivate so that we may find both strength and encouragement. When it comes to recovering from abuse, forgiveness and compassion are 2 of the most important factors. Forgiveness, on the other hand, does not imply that destructive conduct is acceptable or that it should be allowed to continue. In order to achieve mental tranquility, it is necessary to let go of feelings of resentment and wrath while simultaneously taking measures to protect our safety and well-being. By engaging in activities such as meditation and introspection, we are able to recover from the wounds caused by abuse and re-establish our feeling of self-worth. It is important to keep in mind that you are a wonderful human that deserves love and respect. Do not ever give in to abuse because you are deserving of a life that is free from pain. Lesson 3. Never accept dishonesty. In Buddhist ethics, honesty is considered to be the most important component. In his teachings, the Buddha emphasized the need of refraining from damaging speech, lying, and disseminating false information. The acceptance of dishonesty from other people may result in the destruction of trust and the creation of an atmosphere that is poisonous. The basis of trust is eroded and relationships are weakened when dishonesty is not addressed. We put our integrity at risk and make it easier for destructive conduct to occur when we let dishonesty go unchecked. When it comes to all of our relationships, Buddhism teaches us to pursue sincerity and transparency throughout our lives. In doing so, we establish an environment that is characterized by trust and mutual respect. Being alert and having discernment are both necessary for recognizing dishonesty. Being conscious of our own goals as well as the behaviors of others is a necessary component. It is imperative that we respond to instances of dishonesty with clarity and compassion whenever we come across them. Opening up lines of communication may assist in clearing up misconceptions and re-establishing confidence. On the other hand, if dishonesty continues, it could be important for us to put some space between ourselves from connections of this kind. Our behaviors may be brought into alignment with our values, and the courage to preserve honesty can be developed through the practice of meditation and self-inquiry. The more we demonstrate honesty, the more we motivate others to do the same. Living in accordance with the truth is the path to genuine pleasure and freedom, according to the teachings of Buddhism. Constantly keep in mind that you are a person of value and integrity. Dishonesty is something you should never tolerate because you deserve relationships that are founded on trust and sincerity. Lesson 4. Never accept being taken for granted. The state of being underestimated and underappreciated is synonymous with being taken for granted. One of the most important practices in Buddhism is thankfulness, which helps cultivate a feeling of appreciation for both oneself and for other people. When we allow ourselves to be taken for granted, it lowers our sense of self-worth and may lead to sentiments of bitterness and sadness. Buddhism is a school of thought that teaches that all creatures are interrelated and that our acts have an effect on one another. It is an indication that we are not being recognized for the sacrifices and efforts that we have gone through when we are taken for granted. By cultivating an attitude of thankfulness and expressing appreciation, we facilitate the development of an atmosphere that is upbeat and peaceful. The establishment of boundaries and the aggressive communication of our requirements are both vital in order to avoid being taken for granted. Within the Buddhist tradition, we are encouraged to cultivate loving kindness toward ourselves, so acknowledging our value and worth. When we educate people to value themselves, we inspire them to do the same. The cultivation of self-awareness and the recognition of instances in which we are being devalued may be facilitated by the practice of meditation and mindfulness. Through the cultivation of a feeling of inner worth, we become less reliant on the affirmation of others and more self-assured in our ability to effectively enforce our limits. Lesson 5. Never accept unnecessary criticism. When it is constructive, criticism has the potential to be an invaluable instrument for personal development and advancement. On the other hand, criticism that is not warranted may be detrimental and discouraging. The concept of appropriate speech is central to Buddhism, and it stresses the need of speaking in ways that are both constructive and uplifting. Accepting criticism that is not warranted may be detrimental to our sense of self-worth and slow down our spiritual development. Criticism that is not warranted often originates from the critic's own anxieties and unfavorable feelings about themselves. It is of the utmost importance to differentiate between helpful criticism and criticism that is detrimental. Buddhist teachings instruct us to react to criticism with serenity and compassion, acknowledging that it is a reflection of the critic's inner condition rather than a reflection of our own qualities. When dealing with criticism that is not warranted, It is essential to establish limits and communicate in an authoritative manner. Through the direct expression of our emotions and requirements, we are able to establish an atmosphere that is courteous and supportive. Through the practice of meditation and mindfulness, we are able to cultivate resiliency and inner strength, which enables us to maintain our center and maintain our independence from destructive criticism. Through the cultivation of self-compassion and self-acceptance, we become less vulnerable to the detrimental impacts that are caused by criticism that is beyond our control. When we practice Buddhism, we are encouraged to concentrate on our own development and well-being rather than looking for approval from other people. Lesson 6. Never accept pressure to change who you are. Every single person is one of a kind, with their own set of characteristics, capacities, and shortcomings. Buddhism instills in us the ability to see our intrinsic value and to accept ourselves and others in their current state. Accepting pressure to alter who we are weakens our identity and may lead to inner conflict and suffering. Moreover, it can lead to physical pain. Self-compassion and self-acceptance were two concepts that the Buddha highlighted as being very important. The cultivation of inner peace and satisfaction may be accomplished by accepting who we really are. As a result of being put under pressure to change, we often end up conforming to the expectations and anxieties of others rather than our own genuine character. In order to successfully resist the push to change, it is very important to establish boundaries and declare our identity. Buddhism inspires us to be authentic to who we are and to conduct our lives in line with the ideas and values that we hold dear. Doing so allows us to construct a life that is both significant and satisfying for ourselves. The techniques of meditation and mindfulness help us connect with our authentic selves and create the resilience to withstand the stresses that come from the outside world. The cultivation of self-awareness enables us to become more in touch with our own wants and needs, which in turn enables us to make decisions that are congruent with our own selves. Always keep in mind that you are a special and precious person. You have the right to live your life in a genuine manner and to be true to who you are. Therefore, you should never give in to pressure to alter who you are. Lesson 7. Never accept being ignored. Being ignored can lead to feelings of isolation and unworthiness. In Buddhism, the principle of right action emphasizes treating others with respect and consideration. Accepting being ignored diminishes our sense of self-worth and can lead to suffering. The Buddha taught that all beings are interconnected and deserving of kindness and respect. When we are ignored, it signifies a lack of recognition for our presence and value. By practicing mindfulness and loving kindness, we can address this issue with clarity and compassion. Setting boundaries and communicating assertively is essential in addressing being ignored. By expressing our feelings and needs clearly, we can create a more respectful and inclusive environment. Meditation and mindfulness practices help us develop self-awareness and resilience, allowing us to remain centered and unaffected by being ignored. By cultivating self-compassion and self-acceptance, we become less dependent on external validation and more confident in asserting our boundaries. Buddhism encourages us to focus on our own growth and well-being rather than seeking validation from others. Lesson 8. Never accept being controlled. Control can manifest in various forms: manipulation, coercion, or domination. In Buddhism, the principle of non-attachment emphasizes the importance of freedom and autonomy. Accepting being controlled undermines our sense of autonomy and can lead to suffering. The Buddha taught that true happiness and liberation come from within, not from external circumstances. When we are controlled, it signifies a lack of respect for our autonomy and freedom. By practicing mindfulness and self-awareness, we can recognize and resist attempts to control us. Setting boundaries and communicating assertively is crucial in resisting being controlled. By expressing our feelings and needs clearly, we can create a more respectful and equitable environment. Meditation and mindfulness practices help us develop inner strength and resilience, allowing us to remain centered and unaffected by attempts to control us. By cultivating self-compassion and self-acceptance, we become less susceptible to external control and more confident in asserting our autonomy. Buddhism encourages us to focus on our own growth and well-being rather than seeking validation from others. Lesson 9. Never accept less than you deserve. Accepting less than we deserve diminishes our sense of self-worth and can lead to feelings of unworthiness and suffering. In Buddhism, the principle of right action emphasizes treating ourselves and others with kindness and respect. By recognizing our inherent worth and potential, we cultivate a sense of self-respect and dignity. The Buddha taught that all beings are deserving of love and compassion. By accepting less than we deserve, we undermine our value and worth. Practicing mindfulness and self-awareness helps us recognize and address situations where we are not receiving what we deserve. Setting boundaries and communicating assertively is essential in ensuring that we receive what we deserve. By expressing our feelings and needs clearly, we create a more respectful and equitable environment. Meditation and mindfulness practices help us develop self-awareness and resilience, allowing us to remain centered and unaffected by situations where we are receiving less than we deserve. By cultivating self-compassion and self-acceptance, we become more confident in asserting our worth and ensuring that we receive what we deserve. Buddhism encourages us to focus on our own growth and well-being rather than seeking validation from others. By never accepting disrespect, abuse, dishonesty, being taken for granted, unnecessary criticism, pressure to change who we are, being ignored, being controlled, or less than we deserve, we uphold our dignity and well-being. Through mindfulness, self-awareness, and compassion, we can create a life that is meaningful, fulfilling, and aligned with our true nature. Let these lessons inspire and guide you on your spiritual journey. And remember that you are a being of immense value and potential.